Hey guys, and welcome to the first of these videos exploring Grow together in our Bay groups. We are really excited to explore Grow together as a church family, and these videos are they're just conversation starters, conversations between myself and my good friend Faith. They're pretty unrehearsed, they're pretty unscripted, and we hope that they just act as really helpful conversation starters for you as you explore this, as you discuss it together in your Bay groups. And so really, I guess the first question you might have is what is Grow? Grow is a framework for discipleship here at Bay Church that will help us to live in the story of God. But what does that mean, Faith? What are we talking about? What am I? There's some impressive words there that I've used. What am I talking about?
Yeah. Well, for me, Grow is like a mechanism for keeping myself aligned with Jesus. It's about setting habits, whether that's daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, but just ways to help me stay in line. And stay in line sounds very formal, but you know what I mean? It's like it's just keeping my eyes fixed in the right way. It's like it's just a tool that's going to help us do that. I'm really excited about it.
Absolutely. I think you picked up on something already, that actually this whole area of spiritual discipline, spiritual habits can sometimes feel a little bit formal. And actually the word discipline even just feels a little bit like, oh,
bit scary.
What have I done wrong? Yeah. What have I done wrong? You think of the word discipline, and it mainly comes in like a school context of like,
right.
But actually these spiritual disciplines, these are habits that the church have kind of delved into for centuries to kind of, like you say, keep you in line, keep us focused on the story of God, of living in the story of God and developing as disciples of Jesus. Because actually there are loads of confusing and competing narratives in our culture that we can be drawn into. Yeah. So like you say, Faith, grow is really about being intentional, isn't it? It's about being intentional, about living in God's story before any of those stories get a look in.
Yeah. Because it's really easy to just sail through.
Yes.
Especially if you come to church every week, it's really easy just to be like, yeah, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Like I'm meeting with Jesus and everything's great. But actually in between, it's really easy to almost not be looking at Jesus and not even realize sometimes. So and I think this is a really good way of being intentional. I think that word is really important.
Yeah. And so that is why we are going to town on it as a church, really. Like, this is why Grow is going to underpin so much of what we do as a church, because we think this is really important stuff. This is what it looks like to grow as disciples. I guess Grow is our answer to the question, what does it look like to go deeper in discipleship here at Bay Church? Because we don't want to be people who are just sort of shallow in our faith with Jesus. We want everybody and anybody, wherever they're at in the journey of faith, whether they're just exploring faith, whether they've just come through the doors for the first time, or whether they've been part of the Bay Church family since day one and have been Christians longer than that. We want everybody to be able to go deeper in discipleship. And that's what Grow's all about.
Right. And isn't that the great thing, though? It doesn't matter where you're at. There's always space to go further. There's always a next step. And I love that. Yeah.
You might then have a question of, well, what is it? How does this work? How does Grow work? And I think that's a really good question. And the framework of Grow is it's built around sort of intentionally focusing on our habits, on our daily, monthly, weekly, and yearly habits. And Grow does that because habits they play such a key part in forming and directing who we're becoming. Faith, what's sort of the part that habits play in your life?
If I can be really honest, I am really undisciplined. So I really struggle with forming habits. I struggle to break them once they are formed, but I really struggle, like, if I try and, I don't know, get up at a certain time to give myself more time in the mornings, or exercise or diet or anything like that. I go big or go home, and then always go home because it's unsustainable. And so, I'm really keen on sort of just slowly introducing stuff that I can sustain, that isn't going to overwhelm me, that isn't like, I'm not looking for transformation overnight. I'm looking for setting foundational kind of solid stuff that's going to see me through the next 50 years.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And it's really easy as well to sort of beat ourselves up by comparing to other people and where they're at. Because, and actually I think it's more healthy to look at maybe people who are mature in their faith and doing incredible things and seem to have it all nailed and be like, oh, I want to be more like them, rather than be like, oh, why aren't I like them? Because like you say, it's not the sort of thing that gets built in a day. These sorts of habits. It's the slow way of just journeying with God together. And that's why we think it's important to go kind of look at our daily habits, our weekly habits, our monthly habits, and our yearly habits. and I think we kind of use this analogy a lot as we've kind of been working on the material of Grow, of this sort of analogy of a trellis. We're surrounded by a lot of foliage here in our little corner, but we've kind of been using this analogy of a trellis of actually, I don't know much about gardening. Do you know anything about gardening, Faith?
I mean, no.
Fair enough. But for those of us... But for those of you who do know a lot about gardening,
I do know what a trellis is.
We know what a trellis is, right?
So.
We've seen trellises. But like foliage, for certain types of plant, if they're not given a trellis, they will just grow wild. They'll grow in all sorts of different directions, and they'll kind of take over other things in the garden, and not necessarily be for the benefit of the things in the garden. But actually, a trellis can help things grow in the right direction. And really, this is what Grow is all about. It's a trellis. Our habits are the trellis on which our lives develop and grow. And so really, Grow is just helping us to build a trellis around our habits and just make sure and kind of give us kind of that overview that we can just kind of together in our bay groups as a church family, just kind of and as individuals, just really wrestle with what will my habits look like? What does it look like to be a faithful discipleship of Jesus who's growing in depth, who's growing in the right direction, rather than sort of growing all over the garden and getting in the way of other people, but kind of just growing in the right direction.
Yeah.
So practically, Faith, what are we doing? What does this look like?
So we have got some really great resources. We've got our Grow booklet. Don't know if you've seen it.
We have.
Don't know if you've seen it. It's pretty cool. And that basically talks you through all the different aspects of Grow. So it talks you through the daily, the weekly, the monthly, the yearly, but also, the thoughts behind it, the trellis, all that kind of stuff, just to give you the context. But it also has space for you to try and work out those habits yourself, which I think is really important. Yeah. Because, well, I definitely need to write stuff down. Otherwise it could be anywhere.
It's gone forever.
Yeah. And so this booklet is kind of like, this booklet is going to sit with my Bible, and this is going to kind of be part and parcel of the same thing. And then we've also got the postcard. Are we calling it a postcard?
Yeah, I guess so.
Which you can also get yourself a Bay Church magnet.
Oh, yeah.
And
carry on. Nothing to see here.
And you can write your habits on there that you're going to try and make part of your life, and then put it on your fridge. So it's about making things, like we were saying about being intentional. It's like making things front of your mind, I guess. I think that's part of it. It's so easy just to forget, isn't it? And so those two resources are going to be great. We are going to start looking at forming tables, which I'm really excited about, if not a little bit scared, right? But that's about being intentional in your relationship with others, and bringing others alongside you to be accountable. And then obviously we do church. I don't know if you guys know, we do the 10 and the 4. And Kingdom Come and other things like that. So we've got all the weekly stuff going on here. And then there's yearly stuff as well that we're going to talk about in the book. But all of that's explained in the book, which is really cool. Yeah,
fantastic. So exciting. And yeah, like Faye says, it's going to be, Grow is going to kind of be thread through all of our talks at our Sunday services. We've also got the Bay Church podcast, which kind of supplements goes a little bit deeper into some of the things that we might think about in Grow. But also, you're watching this because you're in a Bay group. And Bay groups are they're the place where we, as disciples of Jesus, where we rehearse what it looks like to love God and to love others as ourselves. And so really, they're that place to really thrash this out, to have the difficult conversations around Grow, to have the easy conversations around Grow and everything in between, to have the conversations around, what can my habits look like? Because these videos, like I've said, these are conversation starters. Me and Faith, as I'm sure you'll have already worked out, we do not have this nailed. We are tending to our own trellis as we journey with this together. And so really, this is a journey we're going on as a church. And actually, we think Bay groups are a great place to kind of just encourage each other, because everyone's trellis, everyone's habits are going to look different. And so, me with a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, my habits will look different to someone who's, just just getting married, is like, or someone who's just retired. They'll all look different. Your habits will look different to mine, because maybe you're a morning person and I'm not, vice versa. No, bad example. Okay, all right, bad example. But everyone's habits are going to look different. So we don't
Yeah.
want to be prescriptive with this. We don't want to be like, oh, this is what your habits should look like. But we do want to say, hey, these are some helpful habits. What could it look like for you? And so Bay Groups are the place to explore that together. That's why we're making these videos as these conversation starters. So to begin with, let's begin with this framework of habits, which really revolves all around our daily habits. That's kind of at the center of Grow. What do our daily habits look like, and how does that then spiral out into our sort of weekly and our monthly and our yearly habits? Because actually, if we get the daily habits right, lots of other good stuff is going to flow from there. And so, how can we go about developing daily habits is the big question, because Grow is intended to be a starting point. It's intended to be a place for us to create our own habits that suit our learning style and our life stage, as we've just explained. So don't worry if some things don't work. Just keep going, keep trying new things out, keep hashing it out with your Bay Group, keep exploring these things together. But how can we go about developing daily habits? As you will see in the Grow booklet, our vision for our daily habits is threefold. We want to dedicate, we want to divert, and we want to dwell. And so we're just going to explore a little bit, unpack a little bit of faith, what those look like. Dedicating, this is about recognizing that other stories are fighting for our attention right from the moment when we wake up. What habits can help us to dedicate each day to God and live in his story, not another story?
Yeah. Well, as somebody who is in that 70% of people who sleep with their phone by their bed, and also in the 1,000% of people who then check, I have in the last 2 days basically just tried to, for my very first thing when I wake up, to use the Lectio app. Just to, like you say, switch that narrative slightly, so that the first thing that's coming into my brain in the morning is God's story.
Yes.
And obviously there's loads of different apps or things that you can use, and some people might just prefer to read, but I just find it's like maybe 10 minutes. I don't even know if it's 10 minutes, but it just means that I can just give that moment and just be like, this is how I'm starting my day. And if nothing else, it just gives me that I've chosen to start my day like that. So it's about your heart position, I think, isn't it? And it's like that's where I'm choosing to start my day, rather than what's happened on the news, or even worse, some people might even go straight on social media. So and it's just about, it's a really tiny change. It's such a small change, but I have noticed as well, it means that I'm not then like, okay, cool, I've done that, now I'll go on social media. It's like, I've done that and now I'm just going to get on with my day. Or you know, I'm starting my day right, and I feel like I'm then more present in my relationship with Jesus.
That's so good. And I think you're right. It's such a subtle change, isn't it? But actually, we can be bombarded with other stories, like you say, the news or our emails. Like, oh, I'm so important that I need to find out what's happened in my work overnight, or I need to know what's happened on social media, or even I just, I need to know what my bank balance is, or whatever it is. Those other stories can kind of dominate from day one. I guess it's about saying, like, what's the foundation of my day? Is it remembering that I live in the story of God above any and other stories which are kind of competing for my attention? And I think you're so right. That's a really simple habit to begin with. I'm sure there are other ones that you can kind of explore together. But for me, as I've been going with that habit, I'm a little bit further down the road with that same habit of just being like, okay, first thing I'm going to do is read scripture, even if my 2 children are jumping on me, and there's like, it's like, I'm just going to read even just like the tiniest passage from the Psalms or something like that, just to begin the day with like, oh, actually, I'm a child of God. I'm not a child of the weather or the news or my emails or whatever. I'm a child of God, and I'm gonna live out of that place. I'm gonna parent out of that place. I'm gonna do all the things of my day out of that place, first and foremost. So that's the foundation. That's the start of the day. I guess that then it's like, how do we take that moment into the rest of the day? And I guess that's where sort of diverting and dwelling comes in, these other 2 kind of habits. And so I suppose beginning with diverting, this is about taking a moment each day to kind of pause in amongst the chaos of the day and focus our attention on God. And I suppose what sort of habits have been helpful for you, Faith? What habits can help us to divert our attention to rest again upon God?
I think something that I really love, which I haven't done myself yet, but I know Matt's shared a few times, he has like a couple of alarms on his phone. And like the one that I always remember is this one at 3:20, and it's like, it's just a moment for him to go, oh yeah, this is when I'm going to remember
Ephesians 3:20.
And I just think that's so powerful. Like, just doesn't matter what you're doing. You see that alarm, and I know, like, now he doesn't have to go and look it up and read it. It's like he knows it, and it's like, oh yeah. And it's like, I think just moments like that, and just, again, it's about being intentional, isn't it? So I haven't been intentional because I haven't set those alarms yet.
Sure.
So, but it's about doing that, and then those habits become so much easier to follow through on, and almost it becomes more difficult to not do it.
Yes.
Because you have to choose not to do it. Yeah. And in choosing not to do it, I certainly would feel, well, I'm choosing to not spend time with God, which I don't know about you, but that doesn't sit right with me. So it's like you're put in a position where you have to choose. And actually the easiest choice is to do it.
Yeah.
Is to do that habit. And like with the morning thing, like it's really not hard. I don't know why it's taken me quite so long. Like, it's not hard. It's an easy thing to do, and it's a nice thing to do. And so I think, it's, and I always feel better after it. So it's about being intentional and setting those things in place to make those choices easier, I think. Yeah. I think that's something that really resonates with me. Yeah. Because in that moment, well, I just don't have the headspace to remember myself. Yes. So it's about just taking a bit of time and being like, right, I'm going to put this program in place to kind of give me the structure I need throughout my day. Yeah, I love absolutely. That. I love the divert.
So good. Yeah. So helpful. And I think you're right. It is in one sense really easy, but in another sense, it's, give yourself some grace. We need to give ourselves grace in this whole thing because actually there are, like we're saying, there's loads of other stories competing for our attention. The stories of like, oh, I've got to get this thing done at work today, or I need to pick the kids up, or I need to do X, Y, or Z before the end of the day. And those stories are constantly competing for our attention. And that's why it's like, oh, it's so simple. Why haven't I done this thing yet? And it's like, actually, you haven't done that thing yet because all these other things are sort of shouting at us. And so I most difficult part of the day for me is right at the end of the day, when if I've had a really long day and I'm just exhausted, and I love doing my kids' bedtime, but sometimes it's just like bedtime doesn't go that well. Right. It doesn't go as smooth as you planned, and you're like longer than you're planned, operating out of like not the fuel but like the fumes of the day, and you're just like so tired, and that's the moment where I need to have my attention diverted to God. That's the moment I need to be like, no, I'm not doing this in my own strength. God is with me. Even something as simple as, my kid's bedtime, like actually let this be a moment where I can just really be with my kid and be with them as I divert their attention to God as well. And so
I think that's really interesting though, because it's like that, there's certain moments in your day that push you and test you. And actually one of the things that's talked about in the Grow Book is about taking something which happens every day and almost like just switching it around to be for Jesus. So obviously we eat dinner all day. I know that's the example given in the book. It's like, how can we make that for Jesus? But actually, even bath times and bedtimes, it's like, we have to do this every day. I know I need extra grace in this time. So it would be really sensible to try and build in a habit just before that, or, as part of that, just to get you through.
And I think that's the heart but behind the sort of the dwelling part of our daily habits as well, is that actually it's about acknowledging the presence of God with you throughout the ordinary things of the day. And so, what that could look like could be, I like to sing in the shower sometimes. Oh. Sing a little worship song in the shower, that can be a little worshipful moment. But there are more profound ones than that as well. Like you say, dinner time can be a real moment for a lot of families. Like where actually it can just be a place where you're just getting food into your body. But also, actually, for lots of people, actually we see it again and again in the Gospels, don't we? Jesus eats with people and makes. There's no kind of sacred or secular divide there. There's like, no, this is like we're sharing together. This is a spiritual moment. This is a deep moment, and actually, it's thinking about like, what could that look like? What can meal times look like for you in your context and in your life? What could that look like? So, what does it look like for you, Faith? Sorry to put you on the spot, but what sort of habits do you have that kind of help you to remember that God invites us to dwell with Him throughout every moment of the day?
So we try really hard to sit at the table for food with the kids because it just makes sense. And we always say grace. My parents have always said grace, to the point that we kind of laugh about it because it's just the same thing. You just say the same thing every time. And in fact, growing up, I'm not even sure I really knew what it meant or the value of it. But now we're trying to instill in our kids that actually this is a moment to pray. This is a moment just to invite Jesus into this moment with us. And just to remember that actually all of this food is from him. All of this family, you know, everything is from him. And so that's really important to us. And the boys do. They just say grace. Everybody just sits there waiting to eat. One of them will say grace, and then it's like, go, go, go. As a young, are we a young family still?
Yes, you are. Be kind to yourself. Okay. You're a hero.
You know, our routines have changed a lot.
Yes.
We still pray with the boys. Sometimes they're already asleep.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the big ones aren't keen. But for us, that's our habit of inviting Jesus into that moment. And, you know, it just, again, like you say, it's like that reminder, isn't it? Like, he's here all the time. We know he's here all the time, but it's really easy for us to not be looking.
Yes.
And miss it.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so we have moments like that throughout our day. If ever I'm on a long drive, it's not really a habit. I'm not going to share it's not a habit.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So there we have it. We have begun to explore Grow Together, and we've explored what the vision for our daily habits could look like. We've explored what it could look like to dedicate, to divert, and to dwell with God throughout the day. And now I guess it's over to you. We've chatted a little bit about what it kind of looks like in our own lives, but we'd love for you to explore together now within your Bay group what it looks like for you to do this, for your habits, your daily habits, what it looks like. If you've already got daily habits, to kind of just take a little overview of them. If you're just beginning on this journey of building your own trellis of habits, to just begin to do that now. So there'll be some questions on the screen for you to explore together in your group and to begin to go on this grow journey together within your Bay group as we journey as a wider church.